A self-join is taking a table and relating it unto itself within a query. And if you haven't watched the previous training video on data joins, you want to watch that so you have an idea what we're talking about here. And assuming that you have, I'll continue. I want to look at the supervisors table because that's the table I want to create a link unto itself within a query. And I'll talk about that in just a second here, but let's look at the table first. In the table I have all these employees. And I have their employee ID over in the left column, and to the right I have their supervisor ID. So if I look at Max Klinger here, his supervisor is the employee with the ID of 18. So I come down here, employee ID 18 is going to be Paul Heffernan. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to create a query where I have the first column list all the last names of the employees, and in the second column list all the last names of their supervisors. So to get started, I'm going to come up here to this query that I just started. Well, actually, I only added the table here, but I need to add the same table again because I'm going to create a link unto itself or a self-join. To do so, just right-click anywhere up here in the gray area, go down and left-click on Show Table, double-click and add the Supervisors table again the second time. Let me close out, and you'll see that it can't keep the same name as the first time we added the table, so it gave us an _1. That's fine. And what we have to do is we have to create a link or a join between these two tables, because if not, we're going to get erroneous data, as we just learned in the previous training video on data joins. So what I want to do is to be able to link the supervisor ID, which is the last column in this table here, to an earlier column or the first column, which is the employee ID, by clicking and dragging supervisor ID to the ID column. Now it's important that you do it this way because if not, you're going to get bogus results. In other words, I can't do it the opposite and take the first column and link it to the last column. It's got to be the last column linked to the first column here. And we'll go over that in just a second. Next, after I have these linked, I'm going to go ahead and add the last name for my supervisors, my first table here, by double-clicking on it, and then double-click on the last name for my second supervisors table. And what that's going to do is it's going to list all the supervisors' last names here in this column when I click on the datasheet view, and all the employees' last names in the first column. Why? Because it's the way I clicked and dragged and I created the relationship or the data join between these two tables, which is of itself. By dragging the last column or the latest column or the furthest column over to the right, supervisor ID, in the first table that I added, to the table itself, again, to itself in the second table that was added, to the first or the earliest column. Well, let's take a look. Let's see if it makes sense. When I click on the View button, it's hard to tell, isn't it? Well, let's take a look. I'm looking at the last name Hill. Let me go to my table. Let's come down here and look at Hill. Who is the supervisor? Well, it's employee 1. Well, when I come up to employee 1, it's Max Klinger. Go back to the supervisors. How about Hart? Come over to the table. Come down here. There's Mary Hart, and the supervisor is 1. Max Klinger here, employee ID 1. So it works. Now, if this gets a little confusing, especially if you're going to give this to somebody else to look at and go, well, what the heck is the supervisor? We can tweak this a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and right-click and go back to Design View. Right-click on the second table. Remember, it's the managers table. The last name. It's going to be listing all the last name of my managers or supervisors, and click on Properties. Over here under Alias, we're going to change that to Managers. Hit Enter. Changes the name of the table, so at least in the design view that makes sense. Then I want to come down here and click in the field that says Table here, and I also want to put the caption in as Managers. So when I change to the datasheet view, the caption for that column is going to be Managers. Okay, let's take a look. Let me close out of the property sheet and then click on the View button. Double click over here to expand that, and double click here to auto fit it, and it says supervisor's last name, but we know that that's coming from the supervisors table. It's the employees, and these are the actual managers of these employees by last name. If it helps, we can change this column to last name, so we can right click and go to Design View, come down here, click in the table cell for supervisors, and bring up that property sheet up here in the Design tab to the Show Hide group. Click on Property Sheet. Then for the caption, we can say, hit Enter, go ahead and click the datasheet view, and there we go, the column's now employees. Now, like I say, if you don't link this right, if I go back to the design view, and let's say I go ahead and delete this join, and let's go from the first column in the table ID down to supervisor ID, the last column in the table, thinking, oh well, you know, the ID, the first table, should be the first field here, and the supervisor ID, the second table here, should be the last here, in the last column here. Well, if I click on the Run button, Klinger, here's the employee, and it says that the manager is Hill. Well, if I come here and I look at Klinger, the manager is employee 18, and that's Paul Heffernan. So I go back here, and you see how it's got it flipped. Klinger was the manager for heel, heart, doe. So that's why it's important that when you do your design, at least in all simplicity, why I go ahead and when I join my links, when I join the table in and of itself, is I go to the furthest column here and click and drag and go to the earliest column, which is the first column in the second table that I added, which is the same table of supervisors. That way when I go ahead and click on the view button, I get accurate results, employees and their managers. Thanks for watching. Hey, as a quick reminder, if you like my video, please give it a thumbs up. You can also click on me and subscribe to my channel, get notified of the latest videos, and for only $2 a month, you can have access to all my Microsoft Office training videos.